minutes delayed, but we'll get started. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We certainly appreciate the support, and we have a whole agenda we're going to work down through and a lot of interesting topics, and at the very end we have a Q&A session planned, so anybody has any questions, we can certainly do that. So I'm Dave Hall. I'm the president of PPVAR's board at this point, so we'll kind of walk through. With the agenda simply is me to start with. In fact, we had some people that couldn't make it, so it's me and then several others and then me and then several others and then me. So we'll see how this goes through here. So I will do the mission and the board introductions. Joey will step up and do the financial report. Then I'll talk about the PPVAR strategy. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the AVS 01, and everybody will get to see the video that David and company has put together for the law enforcement side. And there will be one planned for the industry side as well. But we're going to put out, this is the preliminary, so there are a couple of edits that have to be done, but we thought it was important to get that video out for everybody to take a peek at it. And then Frank will talk about the PPVAR from the public safety point of view, and then we'll do Q&A at the end of that. So everybody knows the mission. It's on the website. It's to promote the value of verification and the validation of alarm events during emergency response process using video, audio, or other emerging technologies, along with any proven best practices that evolve. So the board members are, as I said, myself as president, Frank is a vice president, Mark McCall, who wasn't able to attend, is also a vice president. Joey is the treasurer. Nicola, who's here at the end, yep, she's the secretary. I saw you, and then I lost track of where you got to. So Tom Nakatani is here. He's the immediate past president. Rob Baxter is on the board. John Tremonti from Mission Critical Partners is on the board. Bob Finney, who's a director of a 911 center in Florida, is on the board. Larry Folsom is also a past president, is on the board. Scott Harkins, Andy King, who's a deputy fire chief from Tennessee, and Steve Walker from Stanley Security. And Jeannie is our executive director. She keeps us all, in line, essentially. So here's, a picture of this is on the website as well. So here's everybody that I just mentioned, who are board members. Under Tom's leadership, we kind of changed things up a little bit with the vice presidents. So what the plan is right now is that since we have a combination collaborative relationship with the industry, they brought public safety on the board several years ago, and now the movement has been to switch every presidency back and forth. So I, on the public safety side, hold a position now. It will translate to Mark McCall on the industry side after me, and then Frank's in line for the next evolution of this position. So when they first said, would you be interested in being president of the board, I said, yeah, sure. I said, that would be great, it'd be an honor. And I said, I can plug it into my schedule for a year. And then Tom said, oh, it's 2 years. So I said, okay, it's 2 years. So everybody knows that as they're coming on, it's a 2-year commitment on the presidency. So I think that's good in that it builds essentially consistency to the position. And once we start a project, it gives us 2 years to move that through. And the way we step down past presidents, it builds additional consistency into the program. So we have a variety of members, which we appreciate on both sides. There are public safety members, all shown down in the bottom right corner. And then I'm not going to read through them all, but we have quite the group of industry members as well, which is really important. And I think the whole benefit is that there is this collaborative effort that takes place here, so that the alarm industry, we get to know their concerns. When I came into this position several years ago, was appointed to the board as a member, there were things that I didn't know. I'd been in law enforcement since 1979. Don't do the math. But essentially, I responded to hundreds, if not thousands of alarms over my career, 32-year career in law enforcement at at the street level. And I've always said, and I said recently in an interview for one of the magazine articles, that the alarm came through the 911 center, but it was a black box, basically. Nobody understood, at least from the street, we didn't understand what was going on behind that, and what transpired from the point of the event down to the point that it got to us. We were just responding on a generic alarm. And we'll talk about that when we get to AVS-01 too, and why AVS-01 is so important. But this collaborative relationship between the industry, the alarm industry, and public safety, I think is going to pay dividends. It already has, and will continue to pay dividends in the long run as well. So appreciate everybody, again, being here and being part of this process, and we are open for that collaborative effort. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joey, and she can talk about the treasurer's report.
Good morning. Thank you everybody for coming. I'm going to make this quick. Everyone's aware that we have been a rather frugal bunch. We are a completely volunteer organization. We don't pay anybody. So everybody's dues goes directly to the mission. And that's all we fund and we do. So for better or worse, it kind of worked out in a good way. Our annual dues are $78,000. So far this year we've had $15,423 in expenses. I'll go over what that entails on the next slide. So our net revenue for this year is $62,577. The better portion of this is where our reserves are right now. It is $216,970. What COVID gave us the one good thing that came out of COVID, so there wasn't a lot, it allowed us to build our reserves to move into what we can do for our strategy, which Dave will go over later with AVS-01 and outreach to law enforcement and really driving the mission forth for the collaboration with law enforcement and whatever. So we've done a very good job of maintaining our expenses to do that. As you can see, the majority of our expenses in a year are really our operational subscriptions, things like Constant Contact, our QuickBooks, things of that nature. We also have administration, which is Jeannie, our executive director. We have our marketing spend that we do with SD Marketing that helps us make sure that we keep everybody informed. All of you should be receiving the regular newsletter now. We've tried to make sure that we work with Stan and SEAC to get out any information that may be necessary right now for where we're going, as well as AVS-01. And then a small amount of travel, and then recruitment, because we currently have a board opening for a sheriff, so we're working hard to recruit that. And so that is really the end of where we're at for money. Anyways, ideally, like I said, we want to spend on our strategy. So all of your dues are 100% going to the mission. There is no very large salaries or over expenditures. So does anybody have any questions? All right, you guys are easy on me.
Thanks, Joey. Joey mentioned the opening on the board for a sheriff. We will be teaming at the NSA, and we have things on our website opening for that. So what we're looking for basically is a full service sheriff, because we know that there are different deployments and different types of sheriff's offices. But we think incorporating somebody that has responsibility for alarm response, which is part of our mission, is a critical piece to that. So we'll keep moving forward, and we'll be joining TMA again at the NSA in their one of their booths in order to put together that advertisement for that. So again, so our strategy is pretty much been consistent and stayed the same. In 2022, it's been consistent with what it's been, the 5 key initiatives. One is we worked on TMA AVS-01, very involved in that committee, and it's in draft and it's about ready to come out for public comment here shortly. So what we are working now on is the implementation plan, and the video that you'll see here in a little bit is all about that implementation plan and what we're going to do to put that out through social media and working with David to kind of advertise that. And two of our members, John Tremonti's not here and Bob Finney's not here because they're doing a presentation at the NINA conference. And then we have some additional ones. We were just advised of this past week that we have a slot now at IACP. So all of that's going to be putting forth AVS-01 and how it's going to be implemented. So We're going to continue to develop an integrated relationship with TMA. We're working on an agreement that kind of combines us. I know there was a separation at one point. We want to get back a collaborative effort with them. We have a collaborative working relationship now. We're going to continue that. We're going to begin a conceptual development of a fire alarm standard. AVS-01 was intrusion-based, but we understand that we have a major problem as well, sometimes depending upon jurisdictions, with the fire side. So we're going to look at that as a working group and partner with TMA on that as well. We're going to build a partnership with ProQA, PowerPhone, and other ECC call-taking software. For those of you not as familiar, when a call comes into a dispatch center, they utilize one of those software products for a colloquy of questions to whether it's the alarm group that's on the central station that's calling, or whether it's a citizen call, and asking those questions, and they put it out as whatever their classification of that response event is. So ProQA, we've already had some discussions with them, and they are interested in working with us. We think PowerPhone will be as well, or whatever other call-taking software is out there, to try to work a way that we can create this kind of natural flow process and a symbiotic relationship, essentially with, from the time a central station gets the call to how it gets passed down through that software product and then put out to responding units. So and then PPVAR membership recruiting, we welcome everybody to apply and become members of PPVAR. We appreciate your membership and your support, and we're open on the public safety side as well as the alarm industry side. So pass the word. We'd be happy to have everybody to be a part of that collaborative relationship. Our foundational goals are increased actuals and arrests. We think that's an important piece. Greater dispatch efficiency. And I think one of the critical things, and AVS-01 will help support this, is increased officer safety. Better, more cost-effective use of public safety resources, because every call that you respond to is a debit on the salary side and everything else that you do. And with budget shrinking and officer numbers shrinking, it becomes a real critical piece that efficiency has to be one of the things that is front and foremost. The other is reduction of alarm notifications that are unverified, and reduced insurance losses resulting in lower premiums. That's critical too as well. So our best practices under ANSI standards and others, and verification is alarm verification scoring standard. Again, the AVS-01. Connectivity to PSAPs and ECCs, continue to work on verifications best practices. Updated PPVAR website. We have a best practices thing there. We've just gone back over it. That'll be re-released essentially. Not much changes to it, but we felt the need to dynamically update that moving forward. So include all public safety, police, fire, EMS, emergency communication centers, and then engage ECC call-taking vendors to include the AVS, which is what I talked about with ProQA and PowerPhone and the others. So. The alarm scoring, verification scoring standard, AVS-01. The purpose of that committee, and many of you were on those calls, so again, we appreciate it. That was a pretty arduous process over 2 years for us to arrive at this point, but we think it's a really good, strong standard. And the fact that we've not gotten internally much feedback on it means that it really was a strong collaborative effort of everybody that was involved. And that involved, everybody, a lot of people from the industry, a lot of people from public safety, and we hashed out a lot of the issues right there. So we think it's a pretty strong standard. So the long-term strategy will cover burglary, robbery, duress, and ultimately fire and medical is part of long-term. But AVS-01 is mainly centric to intrusion and duress. So the scoring standard developed and implemented, it has to be flexible with respect to the technologies and data sets used to calculate the alarm term. And we worked really, a lot of the discussion came down, and Tom will probably talk about this, was the data side. When we looked at data and the whole scoring, it kind of morphed a little bit. It started from algorithm very centric, and it kind of moved in a different direction through all the discussion with the industry. But it still takes that into practice. So the alignment with TMA, the Monitoring Association, again, collaboration, administration. We are pretty close to a management agreement between PPVAR and TMA. It's under development, but we think it's about ready to go to the board, the TMA board, for their consideration. The goal is closer alignment between TMA and the PSLC through standard development collaboration. Trade shows, we're heavily involved in that, and membership, cooperation, and support. But PPVAR will still maintain an independent board and an executive director moving forward with that relationship. So the communication outreach, trade show participation, I talked about this. Expand PPVAR membership, we talked about that. Security industry training, because we think one of the critical pieces, even when AVS 01 is put forward as an ANSI standard, one of the critical pieces will be the training that goes out there. So we're looking at a variety of different online trainings. Training law enforcement and ECC people is problematic, to say the least, because they work 24/7, a whole variety of shifts. It's really costly and not very effective to put it out in 8 hours on this day, send everybody you can, because most of the time you can't spare people to send. So we're looking at what Pennsylvania has done with their police officers now is it's all online training certifications, CEUs, and we think that's probably a good model. So we'll be looking at how to do that for the law enforcement side, for the ECC side, and for the industry side as well. So communication, strategic plan, and marketing engagement are part of that outreach. So PPVAR new member outreach we talked about. You're encouraged to invite people to join. There's 5 classifications of membership to PPVAR. The alarm industry, regulars public safety, regular consultants, and then associates is business and associates is government or nonprofits. So everything's on the website. Feel free to join and take a look at that. So let's talk about the ANSI standard, and I think we'll give you the preview, if David's ready, of the video that he and his group have put together.
There are about 6,000 emergency communication centers nationwide that handle hundreds of millions of emergency calls annually. This number includes a significant number of intrusion alarm calls. Though there are hundreds of monitoring centers calling into the ECCs, to date there is no standard or unified communication protocol used for effectively and precisely communicating intrusion alarm calls to ECCs. Responding to alarm calls creates demands on staffing and budgets and can jeopardize the safety of first responders while straining community emergency resources. This is why it is vital to have a universal standard for how these calls are communicated and received to best process the millions of events that occur annually. The security industry and public safety have come together to discover solutions that improve safety, situational awareness, and verification for both first responders and citizens. Introducing AVS 01, a new initiative to help solve this problem. AVS 01 stands for Alarm Validation Scoring and is an ANSI standard. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute, a private, nonprofit organization that administers and coordinates the U.S. voluntary standards and conformity assessment system. AVS 01 is a collaborative effort by groups from the alarm industry, monitoring industry, law enforcement, and public safety. It will standardize information communicated by a monitoring center to an ECC when requesting a call for services, not limited to only alarm signals, but also including data from video, audio, and other emerging technologies. The creation of the Alarm Validation Scoring Standard will help by standardizing the alarm notification process to ECC's PSAPs from central stations. A standardized process will add enhanced scrutiny to alarm analysis and result in relaying consistent, improved call information. This standard will bring greater clarity and efficiency to the alarm response process. To learn more about AVS 01 and how it can relate to public safety and ECCs, visit tma.us or ppvar.org.
Kudos to David for the production of that, and Chris. So we think it speaks volumes about what our intent is and where we're trying to get to. We're real anxious to move that forward. So let's talk a little bit about it. The TMA AVS 01 Standard Committee It's a validation scoring standard, alarm validation scoring standard. Mark McCall from EMIX chaired that committee. Many of you, as I said before, were on the calls. I co-chaired a working group, the public safety working group, and Larry Folsom co-chaired the data group. And then Larry Dishard from LRD Consulting was the recording secretary and pretty much put it all together in writing and managed that. Glenn Schroeder from Net1, a TMA standards chair, was a part of it, and Jay Hahn, who TMA board liaison for standards, kind of shepherded it through and kept us all in line as we move forward, and is leading the charge with Celia at TMA in order to get this thing moving. So what was the membership? There was 46 committee members. Everyone who applied was accepted. To show you the collaboration piece to this, monitoring side had 18 members. Public safety had 7, manufacturing service providers had 17, and the consultants and our TLs had 4. So it was pretty nice group. There was a fabulous discussion that came out of it, and I learned more than I could imagine when I started. So what's the value? Well, it creates the ANSI standard that adds value to security customers, the ECC PSAP community, and the security industry. Credibility is another key feature. It creates the ANSI standard that uses available data. Doesn't specify what the data is, but it says data to raise the confidence of dispatch requests, calls for service. And I'm used to an alarm is an alarm is an alarm, with no information sometimes as to what you're responding to. So you just don't have any indication under current system. And different companies report it differently, and it can be pretty confusing. So the third is the flexibility. It creates that standard to accommodate innovation. It allows new technologies and data sets, and Tom can speak to this, to be adopted when analyzing alarm activations, automated or manual process. It was critical, as the committee talked, to take every central station into consideration so that those that are still doing a lot of manual processing still can fit right into the AVS-01 process, but it also allows for automated centers or more automated centers to jump on board as well. So it really applies to the whole range of central stations. The consistency, though, is that the message that they push on to the ECCs is the same. So and then the adoption, create an ANSI standard that can be easily and widely adopted by both the security industry and the ECC PSAP community. Adoption is all part of the advertising piece, the marketing piece that we will put out there. So Public Safety PSAP ECC Working Group was the one I chaired. We defined the output, we defined information to be provided by the monitoring center to the PSAP, call for service requests where the TMA AVS-01 has been adopted. And one of the things that I kept talking about is you can't, if you have a system that exists now, somehow you have to parallel on that system. And 32 years in law enforcement, even now with my agency, we respond basically either code, full lights and sirens, get there fast, urgent, get there but don't break your neck getting there, and or routine, which is slow, gradual, no lights, no sirens. That's the way we do it. So there has to be some way that it fits into that metric in terms of reporting. And you'll see as we get in there, that's where our leveling kind of came in as well. So the data working group, research data available and recommend subsequent processes to achieve that desired output, research applicable to alarm activations, collect, analyze actual alarm and false data, and there was a whole myriad of interesting points that came out of the data review that was done by that subcommittee. And then determine the significance in terms of weighting, and then the model draft to take a look at creating a score using the available data. So the initial data to scoring metric was looking at threat levels. We looked at the impactful data, and I'm not going to go over each and every one of this, but so you have life safety, like robberies, with high confidence levels to low confidence levels. A scoring metric was played in there, the level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the event assessment was put in there as well. So the threat level term created by the work group to facilitate committee mission AVS committee to determine actual terminology was preferred by public safety. And then the number of threat levels, went through a whole gamut. We started out, well, maybe you can have 10. And then we're like, well, maybe 2. It's like, no, it worked out to be 3 primary, urgent, routine, urgent, and emergency. And then the other one is a life safety, duress, which is a little bit different by definition. You know that there's a human person that pushed that duress alarm and they're in trouble. So get there fast. So taking a look at the different ones, panic holdup from security systems allow a person on premise. They feel they're under duress, so that is a human interaction with a trigger device that says, I'm in trouble. Traditional panic, hold up, duress keypads or button activations in the users. There's a manual activation of that threat. So that became a critical piece. So category 3 was emergency response, which I talked about. There's a visible, audible eyewitness or analytical data confirmation of a high confidence level that there's a threat to property or life. Broken glass or other structural data seen, weapons fired, heard by an operator or through other analytics, a whole list of those things that can be part of that emergency response. Someone's in trouble, they need help now, let's get the police there as fast as they possibly can, emergency response. The urgent response can be visible, can be audible, can be eyewitness, Larry Folsom was big on saying there's a human presence there, so that targets this for an urgent response. You may not be able to determine what the human presence is there for. It could be an accidental trip, but there's someone on premise. So that elevates it to the urgent response, multiple trips over different zones with additional risk qualifiers, ARQs, high risk account type and time, non-verified human or human activity seen or heard, site-specific knowledge or data that indicates suspicious activity and the like. 2 does not say there's a crime happening. 2 says there's somebody there. We may be able to determine there's a crime happening, like somebody just threw a brick through a window. But the other possibility is it's not. So, but at least it gives responding officers the idea that there's someone on premise. I'm not stopping for coffee. I'm going to try to get there as quickly as I can, but it may not raise up the level of an urgent emergency response, or rather an emergency response. And then finally, intrusion alarm is category 1. It's absent any contributing factors that we listed in 2 or 3. It could be single or multiple activations for one reporting zone. It could be intrusion alarms with supporting video, but no indication of any human presence and the like. So that takes it down to a level 1. And then there's the 0, that it's an intrusion alarm where it's determined through the central stations that there's no need to notify the ECC or the PSAP. It's not warranted. So notwithstanding special instructions, this determination could be made if no present or past human activity is seen or heard by an operator or an analytical data. So we have some town halls coming up. TMA has put those out. You can go on the TMA website to register for the town halls. The Standards Committee has scheduled 5 of them. They're standalones, so you don't have to go to all 5. But it's basically for TMA members and other stakeholders. And as I said, you can go to their website and click into the register and register for whichever one you may want to be a part of. We will all be on those calls and be able to answer questions as we move this forward. So I'll turn it over to Frank now, and Frank can talk about the PPVAR public safety perspective on this.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a good thing to see so many people committed, but I also want to congratulate the board. It takes a lot of courage to really commit yourself to serving a board. I know a lot of you serve on boards, and it's not easy. It's easy to sit in an audience, but it's not so difficult to volunteer. And these volunteers here give their time and effort to making things better. My perspective is a little bit different. It comes from law enforcement, over 30 years now. Still serving. I still serve today as a tactical flight officer for an aviation unit in Miami. And so I see the perspective from the 5,000-foot level. And because of what they do, I've actually changed the policies within the department now. And the aviation never responded to alarm calls. Today, alarm call goes off, the helicopter goes out in response to that call. And it may seem something that It's outside the routine, but it provides an intervention opportunity. With AVS-01, we could even enhance that even further. Having the helicopter respond to those alarm calls when there's a verified situation going on. So I want to extend out my thank you, my appreciation to the board, because it's an absolute honor after 30 years. And I actually feel embarrassed about this. After 30 years, I've discovered them. It took a long time to discover this group, and I've been looking for it for a while because alarms have become a quite interesting situation. But I'm going to go through this PowerPoint. I'm going to add some additional comments to it from my perspective from law enforcement to kind of add a little bit more perspective on it. And again, I thank the board members for doing what they do. So public safety, the standard is very, very critical because safety is in the hands of the alarm industry and the police department. We've got to work together as a joint operation. This collaborative effort could lead to a significant amount of opportunities for the board. Am I supposed to sign here? Or does it click?
You just hit the space bar.
Oh, thank you very much. So it is a mission critical opportunity for both the alarm industry and the police department. Our response intelligence has enhanced tremendously over the last several years, and every year it multiplies, right? When we think about technology, it changes every minute, every day, every hour, it continuously changes. We have to evolve with time. I will say that in the world of chiefs of police, the alarms can be a nuisance. I'm trying my very best, and so is Dave, to educate them, as well as the members of the board. It's been a force multiplier for many, many years. It's been an advantageous partnership with the alarm industry. If not for the alarm industry, I would tell you that we would have a significant more victims of home burglaries, robberies, thefts, commercial thefts, if it wasn't for that. So they have played a valuable, valuable role in the world of safety. A lot of police chiefs and police officers take credit at community meetings for reducing crime, but I rarely, if ever, hear them say, and I want to thank my partners in the alarm industry for helping us out. There's so many alarms in the community that prevent crimes, that intervene at the right moment. The alarm goes off and the bad guys run away, but they rarely recognize it. But we know that over the years, it had become a tremendous force multiplier for the police department. This is it's a problem in the police world today, more than any other time. And I'm going to ask you today, when you go back to your hotel room, look at the local news if you haven't seen it. Yesterday, the chief from Dallas PD was actually in front of the commission. The city manager is about to get fired. I don't know if you knew that or not. But one of the reasons why he's about to get fired, because alarm responses, I should say, police response is up by 1%. So think about it. They're going to fire the city manager because police responses are up by 1%. Now, if I'm the police chief, I know how I can reduce that. A great partnership with the alarm industry in identifying which alarms should I go to and should I not respond to. Because every time that officer is at an alarm call that wasn't needed, that's another delay in that system. The analytics today in the public safety world is a lot more difficult to manage as a police chief than ever before. You're being rated based on standards. You're being rated on percentages. Think about what I just said. A city manager in a major city, Dallas, is about to lose his job for a number of reasons, but one of which they said is because police responses were up by 1%. The average person, 1%, that's it? That's how significant it is today. This AVS-01 and this partnership with the alarm industry can help us tremendously in helping public safety. It is key to our success as we move forward. It's not just an alarm. These are opportunities for intervention. But it's not an intervention based on a rudimentary method that we've seen in the past, that alarm goes off, it goes to the ECC, the PSAP, and the cop is deployed out there. As President Dave said, we've responded to probably hundreds, if not thousands, of these calls if we put our time together. It becomes routine. But it's also very, very dangerous. It's dangerous for the community. It's dangerous for the officer. A bad alarm call could lead to some really, really bad results. I've seen it myself. I've seen some innocent homeowners get killed. I've seen some innocent business owners get killed. I mentioned this often where there was in the city of Coral Gables, in just a suburb of Miami, a alarm call went off at a office building. A young man that worked in the office decided to go back after hours on a Friday night, late into the evening to get some paperwork. Forgot the alarm code. Went inside, alarm went off, officer responded. He was inside with the lights turned off. He's inside his own office getting paperwork. Officer went inside trying to sneak around, use some cover and concealment to get inside, and came across this individual. The individual startled the officer shot and killed him. Bad result from an alarm call. Now, for every one bad result, there are millions of great results around the country that the alarm industry services very, very well. So I'd say that's less than a 1% chance of that happening. Nonetheless, AVS-01 can try to avoid those catastrophic situations from occurring. You know, the protocols in the police world are extremely important standards. If we have to convince these police departments, PSAPs, and ECCs that this works. So how we evolve into it is just as important as how we deliver it. If they don't buy into it, they're not going to accept it. And so this is a constant delivery message about this great partnership. Dave and I can really muster up a lot of views on this in terms of getting people to come to the table to be a good audience. So we talked about the ICP conference coming up, I think it's October or August, what is it? October? It's coming up in October. We aim to kind of get out there and really network with all these major city police chiefs. Once we get one of the major police chiefs to adopt this, then everything else kind of follows. You know, police work is a lot about, I don't want to take risk, but if Dallas did it, Miami did it, if California, LAPD did it, then I'm going to follow suit behind them. And so that's the idea, is kind of get the big boys involved and have everybody else kind of follow along. If we get those big ACCs to adopt it, everybody else just kind of come along the ride. And with their partnership, we're going to see some great, great success stories. You know, this is a pretty good slide, I would say, because as we look at it, it's always been the same way. And because it's been the same way, it doesn't mean it has to be the same way. Anything we're doing today that we do the same way next year, I think we're going to fail. Technology is taking us in a totally different world. In policing, what I'm seeing is the evolution of you better be evolving every day. When you come to work, make sure you have your people, your team, your command staff, evolving, and the evolution, it's got to be at the forefront of that mindset. It's a key partnership with our private and public sector people that make us greater. We talk about diversity in the workplace. Let's talk about diversity in our deliverables, in our standards, and what's acceptable and unacceptable. If we are still doing things the same way next year, we're headed into a major disaster. Today, I mentioned the city manager in Dallas is just on the verge of losing his job. They gave him a 7-day reprieve, so next week he'll be up on the podium again trying to defend himself as to why he should keep his job. And one of those areas is because of police response. Why? Because they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And here's an opportunity to partner up with the alarm industry, one of the key major providers of services, to really make a huge difference in public safety. I just want to close off with some notes that I have here real quick, if you don't mind, which I think are important. I wanted to share with you my perspective, where it comes from. So I don't just give you my perspective based on a police chief, but I've been at this for 30 years in 3 different departments. Grew up at the Miami Police Department on a SWAT team for 13 years and saw a lot of uninteresting things and terrible tragedies take place. You know, I'm in a place right now where I can make a difference, where I get to partner up with great people like this and all of you out in the audience to really bridge the gap that's been existing in the government world for quite some time. The cops think that they do it better. They think they're smarter. They think that they know what they're doing. I was one of them. I was one of them. We don't know. We don't know, we don't know. The reality is the private sector, people in the alarm industry, know a whole lot more about this business than the average chief. Unless we partner up, unless we strategize together to teach them and show them the way, they're not going to follow along. Because they are centralized in this vision of, I'm the government, I'm the police chief, I know better, I walk around in a uniform that attracts attention, I got 4 stars on my collar. Who is this person in the private sector? How are they going to know more than me? The security world, they don't know anything. The alarm company, please, they're just in it to make money. And the reality is that the alarm company today is showing, more than ever before, their social capital, their social good, to partner up to make things better. This, by the way, does not make money for the company. What they're doing is making an opportunity, creating an opportunity for social good. Unless we can partner up together and follow the leadership of Dave here, we're not going to do any good next year. I hope to come back to the table at our annual meeting next year and provide to you people here, chiefs of police, and say, I'm in it to win it. I am a partner with PPVAR, with the alarm industry, to make this situation better for my officers next year. We want to avoid those catastrophic situations. I'm just going to recap by saying that story I told you about that individual that died at an alarm call. There are many other great stories that the cops have told about immediate interventions by way of an alarm system that saved lives. Thousands of great stories. People that feel safe at home when they go to sleep at night and they hit the alarm code and they go to sleep knowing I'm protected. There's a geofence around my home that while my eyes are closed, I am being protected. That offers an enormous sense of security. There's two ways that we rate crime in the police world. One's a reality of crime. Those are data and statistics, and the perception of crime, right? I could have data all the way to the bottom, and I've had it before, or have crime down to like 2%. Incredibly low crime rate. But the perception of safety is not there. They feel vulnerable, right? They have a high perception that they're vulnerable to being victimized. Remember, the real life is that you're not going to be victimized. That's what we know. But they don't feel safe. I'd rather have them feel safe and have a high crime rate. It works better in my favor that way. I could work really hard on this. Unless I can reduce perception, doesn't work. The alarm industry helps these chiefs reduce that anxiety. Because you provide that geofence when they're away at work, on vacation, and sleeping at night. So I'll leave you with that to say that this is a great mission. It is mission critical. It's an opportunity for all of us to work together. And this leadership here, along with your support, could bridge an enormous opportunity for our nation's safety. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. Well done. I think that the two elements that came out of what Frank talked about in the slides and what we've been talking about throughout the presentation here today is the public-private partnership between the alarm industry and public safety. I think that speaks volumes to a success story that is evolving. And I think the other element is collaboration. The strong collaboration that is part of that process means that there's a synergistic effect that we will get a better outcome than anybody working alone, because we're taking into account both of our worlds and the realities of both of our worlds and what we're putting forth for our success stories moving forward. So I appreciate everybody being part of this. There'll be more to come, I'm sure, as we move this forward and evolve. But with that, Tom's here to talk about, I don't know, you want to?
Yeah, I'll make it
okay.
very short in the interest of time.
Sounds good.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at PPVAR. I don't have a lot of information prepared about the analytics. I was hoping to prepare some slides, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the back end of AVS-01 from the security industry perspective and what we need to do to support that standard, right? So a lot of the standard is in terms of taking the information that we have, and we do have a tremendous amount of information out there that we barely leverage, right? A lot of the information that we currently take in and relay to the police and the 911 centers is literally verbal, right? And it's literally something along the lines of, I've got a motion detector or a door contact that tripped at this address at this time, and that's about all we pass across. So a lot of the ability for us to take the information that we have, right, and condense it into a form that we're very consistent with, that's what AVS-01 is about to me. It's about establishing a very consistent way of translating information that we have, and the basic information is, as Dave said, right? We can do this manually with process, or we can take in all the tools and the analytics that we have, but all of it needs to condense down to this communication that goes out there and turn that into actionable information for the public safety side of the house to use. That's really what we have to do. So how do we establish this? Well, a lot of this is going to be established upon trust. The public safety, this standard is not going to go anywhere if we abuse this standard, right? If we report everything as a 4 or a 3 or even a 2, this is not going to go very far if we can't back that up with the information that we have. So our obligation as a security industry is to make sure that we are providing right? I say very simply, we got to be able to show our work, right, in our analytics. So one of the approaches that we're taking is like, how do we show our work in proving that the category that we're reporting to public safety is something that they can trust, because they will be acting on this, right? We've seen this. I like to use OnStar as an example, right? They take the information that they have, they report how, what the likelihood of a severe injury is during an accident, and that information is so trusted that public safety changes its response. They'll send a helicopter versus an ambulance. They'll route to a trauma center, right, versus like a local clinic. They literally change their response about that. And that's how we're going to drive change that's going to be beneficial to everybody in the industry. So I would encourage everyone, as they look at how they're going to support those categories of information that we're reporting to police, to take a close look at the analytics and the process that we use, right? And that's where ADT is going to be, I'm speaking personally, right, where we're having a lot of conversations about what does that really mean? What type of information do we have, right? The standards committee started there. That's all public information, right? We took all this data about different factors that we find, and the list is probably like over 100 items, right? In terms of like what we think can influence the trust, like the category of an alarm. But you have to take that information and work it into your process and your analytics. And it doesn't matter like the timing of the alarm, but I know the software vendors that are out there are looking at this right now, right? You don't have to do this individually as companies or as individuals. There's going to be some baselines that we're going to look at with the software vendors, talk to them a little bit about what you have available from whether it's like your information about the customer or the data that you have from the products and services that you provide, it's all pertinent to how this comes together, and we will be able to put together that data in such a way that we come up with a consistent set of communications and practices that establish these categories and are able to pass that off to public safety. So those are my 2 cents. We'll have a little bit more details as we go along. This is all exciting and involving, but this is probably one of the coolest things I've seen, right, from an alarm industry perspective of what we'll be able to accomplish this. So again, at the next set of meetings, I hope to have a little bit more information as we work through this ourselves. But this trust and the consistency, the confidence that we have inside the score that we're deriving is going to be very critical, because it's going to be a partnership, right, in translating that information over to public safety, and they will act on it. So look forward to it. Thank you.
That's PPVAR is about a partnership. We've extended that partnership in working on the ABS 01 standard. I think there's a lot of great things to come, that have come, and will continue to come into the future. So it is exciting to be a part of that. I've said when I was interviewed in an article recently, I've said this on the committee reports, that this is a game changer. And it is a paradigm shift. So, and you have to look at it like that. It goes back to the slide that Frank had. If you always do things the same way you've always done them, you always get the same results. This is a new creative way of looking at what we have done in the past and saying, how can we do better? Because continuous improvement from an industry side as well as from public safety side has to be a factor in what we do. It's how we grow as individuals, it's how we grow as companies, it's how we grow as public safety agencies. So it's exciting to be a part of this process, and I thank you for all of your participation as it's come along. And at this point, the panel's here. If anybody has any questions, we'll gladly take the last few minutes to answer any questions anybody might have. Yes, sir.
So what is the strategy in marketing this to the ECCs and PSAPs? How, I guess, here's my concern. You have the software providers. They're going to go change their software. It's all going to be, in my mind, that's how it is. It's not going to be either you're using the standard or you're not, depending on the agency. My concern now is we have software that's only going to be able to do it one way, and an agency that may not accept it that way. So how do you walk that line? Until everybody's on board, what do you do with those who aren't?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and we've actually tossed that around. It's one of what I talked about. I don't know what the market share is for ProQA or PowerPhone, or I know that so there's some other groups out there that have similar things, but what we're looking at on the TMA side with ASAP to PSAP is developing systems where that data flow comes from the central stations through that system to the ECC's PSAPs. So like there's another software component aside from what your software will do, but one of the initial things we're going to do is the video that you saw oriented to public safety. We're going to do a video like that because it's going to be whet everybody's appetite to understand what this is, and this is coming your way.
Well, I sit on the board for TMA.
Right.
Pretty familiar with ASAP to PSAP. We have about 100 agencies or so on board out of 600.
Right.
So I guess that's my concern is getting this thing out there, sold, on board. We've struggled being able to do that with ASAP to PSAP. So I fear in a world of standards, 3 years from now, this thing is going to be adopted by, let's say, half the agencies, half aren't, and my monitoring software is going to be locked into the half that are.
Right.
So am I going to have two systems now for my agent to swivel chair between?
Well, there will be a transition period. There's no doubt about that. But one of the things, the challenges that we'll have to embrace as a part of the marketing, and I say marketing because I guess we're selling a product in a way. We're selling ABS-01. It's not for sale, so you don't have to buy it.
Well, yeah, that's the big benefit of that over
Yeah.
ASAP to PSAP.
But it is a standard which says, here it is, and we're going to promote adopting it. That's why we have 2 board members at NENA right now doing a presentation. We were fortunate enough to be able to bring this to IACP coming up in September. So we're going to keep pushing it out as a board. We're going to travel. We actually have an inquiry from one of the state alarm associations that would like a presentation. So I actually chair the Pennsylvania Alarm Association as well for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police. We're gonna keep doing outreach and pushing it and say, here it is. It's something brand new. We're gonna produce more videos. We're gonna do a video for the alarm side because we understand that social media is where it's at these days. So if we can push it out through social media saying, here it is, here is how you embrace it, here's what it will do for you. Because we all know if it's not going to be a benefit, nobody wants anything to do with it. So we have to put out there, this is the benefit of this process, and this is why you should adopt it. Or if you're an ECC, understand this is coming your way. An alarm central station that has adopted this is going to send you this information. So when they say I have a level 2 alarm, you better know what that means, because you're going to have to deal with that as an operator, as a call taker, and it's going to have to fit into your system, which is why the Pro QA or Power, whatever it ends up being, Power Phone, if they work with us and incorporate, and that we've had in our one session with one of those vendors, they said, yeah, we'd be interested in, once this is in place, because right now it's a standard that's out there, it's not been adopted yet, but once that ANSI standard becomes adopted, they said, sure, we'll incorporate that as a standard. So I think it will take some transition time, and the whole while that transition is happening, we're just going to have to keep taking it to the mat, and saying this is what we said today. This is why it's a benefit to everybody, and this is what it will do for all of us.
I know we're in interest of time. I'll make this as quick as I can, and this is just so that I can track. I know the comments close on this June 17th.
Right.
What's the cycle of this? Is it like NFPA, a 3-year cycle, or is it like UL, it's a live document? I can
The
comment
comments
anytime?
that are closing are internal to TMA.
Okay.
It will then go to public comment.
Okay.
And then you go through the standards process where you have, I believe it's the first 60 days where anybody can publicly comment on it. If we don't get any material requests for change or revision or to look at it, it will then, after 30 days after that, after it's accepted, it will go into adoption. This has been written to be similar to CBS-01 so that it is able to be opened on a more it's not required like NFPA to be on a certain cycle. So if something changes, like, unfortunately, we have a lot of evolution of challenges that are happening. We just had a mass shooting, again, I'll throw it out there. There's going to be changes to law enforcement, there's going to be changes to response, there's going to be changes to security, all these things. We wanted to make a standard that it's difficult to do with ANSI because there's a process, but we do want to make a standard that if we need to reopen it every year, we can.
I'm not sure this has been socialized in the industry well.
We've tried it. We did send out through the various associations trying to do this as we were putting together the committee members, and as I said, we did we invited law enforcement, we invited everybody in that could. So we did the initial work. Once it goes to public comment, it's gonna have another thing where it's socialized with the industry. We're trying to get out and talk about it and do it more. But let's be honest, guys, one of the challenges with this and why the marketing is so important, that goes back to when I was talking about how we've tried to be so respectful of our reserves and frugal with our money, so that we can do the advertising of this, because standards aren't fun, right? If you know this, you chair a standards committee. If you just stand up in the general session and say, who wants to be on a standards committee? You're gonna get no hands. When we go send this out for public comment, or we say we're gonna change this, or we're starting to do advertising, we're talking to law enforcement, all of a sudden everybody's like, this, nobody told anybody. That's the challenge that we have, so that's why the marketing piece, and I don't even wanna say marketing, the education piece becomes so important. Because we're not trying to sell anybody anything. This is a good thing for everybody. We designed the standard, as Director Hall said, to go in line with what most PSAPs, the way they're already dispatching, the 3 levels they already have, okay? So this should reasonably fit into everything. We're never gonna find everything and everything, but ideally, this shouldn't require a heavy lift. It's just an education thing, and there will be a transition period, but the key to keep in mind, though, is that we do want comment from everybody. Tell your friends, because if we're not reaching them, tell them. And this is a good thing.
Well, kudos to the folks who wrote it, because as a first draft, it's probably one of the best written first drafts I've ever seen. So
Mark McCall and Jay Hahn deserve a medal, in my opinion. I've been on those calls and I've tried to help. I am not smart enough to keep track as they're going comma by comma, tense by tense. They did a fabulous job.
thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, I talked to you a little bit about this, but I really wanted to make a public comment as well. The standard is brilliant. I've been on those calls. The details are magnificent. Public safety accepting it. If we have good credibility, we know we can get to that group. It makes sense for all the right reasons. I tell you, the thing that keeps me up at night, okay, is the alarm industry. Actually adopting and implementing and getting it done on our side. I hate to say it, we don't have a good history of adopting standards. And, I know ADT, I'm sure, will do everything in its power to put this standard into place. But, we've got a lot of central stations. An example I use, 2-call confirmation. It took 10 years. That was a no-brainer to make 2 phone calls. We got a standard. It still took 10 years to get to 80% acceptance across the country. Part of the strategy, I think, somehow has got to be to convince most of these central stations, if not all of them, to get this standard in place. And I don't think it's going to automatically happen. I hope the pressure would force them to get there sooner. But again, what keeps me up at night is we get kind of what Rick was alluding to. You get half of the central stations doing it, and half of them don't. And public safety is going to ask the question, just like ASAP. How many people are plugged into this thing? Am I going to get, and you talked about it several times, law enforcement, I believe, needs to see consistent results from the alarm industry for us to get credibility that this is a standard that's going to stick. So I don't know how to do it, how to get these central stations on board, but there's a lot of moving pieces. But our side of it, we've got to have the leadership. We got to get TMA. We got to have everybody saying, guys, we got to get on board with this. We're going to educate law enforcement, public safety, but if we don't deliver, to this standard consistently, we stand a chance of it just, not getting off the ground. And I hope that doesn't happen.
And I agree, Stan. And I think one of the reasons why we've already met with our pro-QA folks is it gets built into their colloquies for the call takers. The question back to the alarm company, if they are not participating, is going to be, what level response is this? What level of alarm have you scored this at? And for that operator to say, what are you talking about? ABS 01. What's your ABS 01 score? you know, if that's built in, that's going to put backwards pressure to say, well, maybe I need to look into this. So I think that it's, and I think what Joey's point's good instead of marketing, education. The education component is going to be really critical on both sides. So the more we can do to push that forward, and we're willing to travel to make that, you know, to put that out there to say this is why it's important, and then we're going to have to continue to do dynamic follow-up to make sure it's being implemented the way it should be. So I think that's all a challenge that we will all have going into the future. But I think it's the ultimate outcome as we see it is going to benefit everybody.
No doubt, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's just getting people
It
to
is,
do it.
but Stan, one of the things I also want to put out there is part of what was very strategic and very brilliant, and I had nothing to do with it. Director Hall and Larry kind of did this, was making sure that we did have TMA and the majority of their central stations in this process, as well as our automation people in this process. So some of the foundational work that you're talking about that was a problem for ECC, remember ECC in the model ordinance, you just told us we need to do it. It wasn't foundationally built in. None of us really participated in the original, you know, and it's just living and learning now. This time we tried to get all stakeholders to really have a collaborative move forward. So I do agree there will be people who don't adopt right away, as much as I wish everybody would. It is a no-brainer. But I think I think we have the best opportunity, and to do nothing is not an option either. So we have to get as many of our centrals as we can. We have to make a commitment. And as an industry, people like ADT, Sonatrol, myself, Stanley, we have to be leaders at NetWatch, stand up and say, this is how we're doing it. And as people see, let's face it, business owners see other people having success. They see us getting actuals and apprehensions. They see our customers being happy. They see people wanting to buy our products or our services. They're going to copy that just accidentally, even if they don't believe in what we're doing. So that's going to be the key.
And that's going to be the seller for the law enforcement side, as you know. AVS-01 puts out a message, and they show up and make an actual. That'll spread, you know, like, why am I arresting a squeegee guy? Well, because they have felony warrants out the kazooie. That's why they're doing squeegee work. And it's the old broken windows all over again. You know, it basically says, here's a strategy that will work for you as police officers. And I think the other benefit, and we toss this around, as you know, in a lot of phone calls, is how do we make this easy for a manual central station as well as for a complicated algorithm software central station? And I think what this has done is blended those two things together. So, you know, even a rudimentary central station who's using manual scoring can do it easily. So it's basically one flavor fits all at a different dimensional levels. So I'm anxious. We'll keep pushing the education piece. As we get success stories, we'll push the success stories out. And it's not going to be like, here's a standard, everybody adopts in the next 30 days. We understand there's going to be an evolution to this. But we will keep monitoring and pressing it forward as we go. So, any other questions? If not, thank you again for coming. Pass the word. Sign up on the TMA website for the town hall, one of the 5 different ones that will be forthcoming. And so try to keep up to date. This is a TMA standard. PPVAR is working in collaboration with them. So keep monitoring TMA. They are the lead to move the NC standard forward. So.
And please sign up for our newsletter at ppvar.org. Jeannie is putting updates out as we send it out every time, so that's a good way to stay informed as well and help other people be